Welcome to Kansas Speedway. Carved from a Midwestern cornfield, this weekend, this 1.5-mile asphalt oval will serve as a field of dreams for drivers hoping to claim the title of NASCAR champion. The chase, 12 talented drivers, including defending and three-time champion Jimmy the Juggernaut Johnson, fresh from that dominating performance last Sunday at Dover. The senior member of the group is sentimental favorite Mark Martin, who currently stands at the head of the class as our points leader. From points leader to pole sitter on Friday, Mark Martin claimed his career-high 7th pole of the year and first ever here at Kansas Speedway. Martin hopes to become just the 3rd driver in track history to win it from the pole. How about an all-Hendrick front row? Dale Earnhardt Jr. clicking off his best qualifying effort of the year in the same car he started in row 2 with at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Maybe he can find his mojo again here on Sunday. Can you say Hendrick sweep? The 3rd best qualifier, another Hendrick car, 25-year-old Brad Keselowski, making only his 12th career start. He will start inside row 2. Take a look at where the chase drivers are qualifying. You see they're spread out pretty evenly. There are 4 chase drivers starting in the top 10, 4 starting between 11th and 20th, and 4 starting from 20th or worse, including Kurt Busch back in 39th position. Hello, everyone. Glad to have you with us, along with Dale Jarrett and Andy Petrie. I'm Jerry Punch here at Kansas Speedway. You know, if you go in the garage area and poll the folks and ask them about this place, they will give you 2 phrases. Kansas Speedway has lots of speed and very little grip. Guys, what kind of challenge does that pose for you?
Well, it's a 1.5 mile racetrack, and that makes it fast. It does have the least amount of banking of all of the 1.5 miles, so that is where the less grip comes from. That's one of the places. One other place is that this track has really matured over the years, and it's worn, the surface has worn, and it's got a lot less grip than in the past. And plus, it's got these tar seams in the middle. There's just so many things that is a struggle to get grip in the right setup here.
Yeah, Andy, I think you touched on pretty much everything. The lack of banking, the seams that you have, the lack of grip really makes it difficult to get your car feeling good underneath you. So you have to strike a fine balance of getting it to go fast for a couple of laps, but you really want it to hang on for you, not go away to where you're losing 2, 3, 4 tenths a lap as these laps go on tomorrow, because we do see a lot of green flag racing. So you better find that balance pretty quick if you possibly can.
There have been 7 different winners of this racetrack in 8 races. The only 2-time winner, the guy Dave Burns is going to tell us about, Jeff Gordon.
And he's another Hendrick driver, of course, Doc. Little update on Jeff's day. Oh, remember last week when crew chief Steve Letarte told me that their car was good, it just wasn't great. So I asked Steve about the first practice this morning and what they were working on and what they still had to do in this practice session. He said, we'd like to turn the center of the corner, roll it just a little bit better without giving up the drive off the corner. Oh, we can make it turn, he said, but I can't give up that drive off. So just little things for Jeff. He qualified 9th, and they're just tweaking on the setup right now. Vince Welch.
Well, it's been a nerve-wracking day for the team that has dominated much of this Sprint Cup season. Tony Stewart's crew chief, Darian Grubb, and the 14 team have been dealing with the situation of Tony Stewart in a car that suffered a vibration, intermittent loss of power during the course of the earlier practice session this afternoon. They replaced the ignition box in the earlier practice, so they missed much of that practice time. They believe this has taken care of the issue, but they're not 100% sure, so this practice session is going to be critical for Tony Stewart and this 14 team, Doc.
Tony Stewart qualified 5th yesterday. He, as you mentioned, he struggled in that first session, although his best lap was actually 5th quickest in the morning practice here at Kansas. We told you about how good the Hendrick cars were in yesterday in qualifying. You will never, ever hear me say this, but folks, this car, the 48, was the worst of the bunch. Now, he qualified 11th, so that's not too bad.
No, it's not too bad, and we've seen over the last couple of years, these guys are the ones to beat when we come out here. He was able to win the race last year. Looks like they even though their car's been fast, looks like they still are really trying to get the car to feel maybe good to Jimmy. You see him really working the steering wheel as he comes off of both turns 2 and 4 in that previous session and a little bit in this session.
I'm not sure the car ever really feels good for Jimmy. You see him right here. He's really making corrections coming off the corner. But I do think he is one of the best race car drivers out there that can drive a car when it doesn't feel well and you're having to chase it with the steering wheel. I think he does better than most drivers at that, doesn't complain, and gives good information back to the crew chief, knowing that you're never going to get all of that out of the race car.
Jimmy may have a reason for wanting to tiptoe here at Kansas in the happy hour, because, folks, 2 years ago he sat on the pole and in the early laps of happy hour took his pole-winning Chevy and did this.
Oh, this is not good. I mean, he had a really good car then, too. Smacked it against the wall. Had to go to the backup.
Yeah, so heavily damaged, DJ, and it's got to make a driver sick. Well, you know, you got that good a race car, and suddenly you have an incident in happy hour, and you got to get a car you haven't turned a lap on and race it on Sunday.
Yeah, it certainly puts you in a bad position, but as a driver, you pretty much forget about those things. He realizes this time he has to come out here, he has to drive this car hard. They have a lot of cloud cover here today, so they have to be thinking about the possibility. It's supposed to be more sunshine on this racetrack tomorrow, which probably creates an even slicker situation. So he's just trying to get everything out of it during practice, as they always do. And I think that's what makes them so good in the race.
Here's a team that really bounced back. Last week, you saw just a moment ago, they finished third at Dover after winning the opening race of the year, the Daytona 500, and also winning at California. They essentially disappeared in terms of top 5 and top 10 finishes.
Yeah, this Roush organization really just has struggled, but we do see, I mean, we've seen, with this, especially with the 17 team, a turnaround.
Yeah, and when you think about all those things that we talked about in the opening right there, talking about a slick racetrack, lack of banking, the seams, everything that tells you this should be a type of racetrack that Matt Kenseth excels at. They just have to get him the car, and it looks like he was third quickest in the previous practice. He's third right now, and looks like his car's hanging on pretty good.
We talk about some of the teams that have really come on. How about this one here? Juan Pablo Montoya. A lot of folks saying they can't be for real. They got into the chase, but indeed they are for real, and they are a factor here down the stretch. Lots of motorsports coming your way. The O'Reilly Mid-South Nationals qualifying tonight, 10:30 Eastern Time, finals tomorrow at 7 o'clock. NASCAR Sprint Cup Series live flag-to-flag coverage tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, beginning with NASCAR Countdown on ABC. NASCAR Now tomorrow morning and tomorrow evening. We will set the day and we will encapsulate the day and sort of summarize what happened throughout the weekend at 10 Eastern Time on ESPN2. And of course, next Saturday, NASCAR Nationwide Series at California, 4 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN2. And of course, the Cup race on Sunday. Happy hour coverage continuing here at Kansas Speedway. Juan Pablo Montoya walking over toward his mentor, who has really been a big help to him, he said, when he came here as an outsider to NASCAR Sprint Cup competition. Mark Martin. Mark right now first in the points, and Montoya just 65 points back in third. On the track, here's the 88 car, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Qualified second quickest, and trying to work to dial this car in as best he can for Sunday. Dave.
Doc, he had a feeling in the race car he didn't like just before this run. Listen.
The steering doesn't work going into the corner. The car just, you turn the wheel, nothing happens to the center. The car is totally numb driving into the corner. You turn the wheel and it just goes straight all the way to the center. Way off the wall.
So they brought the car into the garage for just a couple of minutes, checked everything out on the steering, reasoned that it was okay, and that he was probably just hitting the splitter in the turns, and then that was driving the car up the track. So they've sent him back out now. He stayed out for about 5 laps, and we'll keep you updated.
Thank you, Dave. DJ, what are you seeing here on this steering wheel?
Well, he's got, going back to what we saw with Jimmy Johnson earlier, he's got more steering input into the car here, but that would probably go along with what he's talking about, whether that splitter's hitting. He's having to put that wheel in it to get the car to actually grip and turn a little bit there.
And we just saw an in-car shot from Jimmy Johnson's car early in this practice where he was really working the car, you know, the steering back and forth and really not giving it a lot of input. Like we just saw, Junior was really turning the wheel to the left and kind of holding it there. Jimmy goes through the corner, and he's actually having to work it back and forth and not giving it a lot of input.
Yeah, you got a little bit. You get a little bit deceived with that shot because Jimmy never moves his hands on the wheel. Junior actually takes his right hand off of where he starts in and moves it over to the other side of the wheel to help him hold the car right there. So you'll get a little bit of deception there, as it looks like Junior's got a ton more wheel in it, but he actually doesn't. But you can really see where Jimmy is working the wheel a lot.
You watch Jimmy's car also go up and down across those seams that people were talking about, guys, in the racetrack. That has an impact on how the car handles.
Yeah, and the guys in the Cup Series, they're driving these cars, seem to be affected a lot more. And I think it has a lot to do with the downforce with these cars. That
the lack thereof.
Lack thereof, exactly. And but they really are feeling them a lot more in this car than they are over on the Nationwide side. So, but it is a problem. As you can see, they have to run across them. So as you get there, you either have to decide if you're going to go below that seam with your right side tires or if you're going to try to straddle it.
And a lot of that you have to leave up to the driver to handle some, because you can't really make the race car act the same on those seams and off the seams. I mean, you really just have to rely on the driver to pick where you want to run and then what do you want the car to do.
Yeah, whenever you're running by yourself, you can do that more. As you get in traffic, it makes it more difficult to see those things, and as you try to make passes, so you find yourself in a bad position every once in a while.
Here's a car in Ryan Newman that was the fastest car in practice yesterday prior to qualifying, and everyone said he's got to be one of the favorites to go out and sit on the pole, and he went out and qualified this car 30th. Now, there's the other part of the story is that he actually dive bombed the car into turn 1 on the first of 2 laps of qualifying and then really didn't have a shot.
Well, that's the thing. He knew he had a shot at the time. I think his boss, Tony Stewart, was on the pole. He wanted to go out there and beat him, and he drove the car really hard down in the corner and basically almost crashed the thing. He's probably lucky to bring it back and qualify 30th, but he was giving it a good try.
Well, he felt like that was his shot to get the pole, just as he said. He was doing everything, and sometimes you get a little too keyed up when you know that you have that good a race car and you want to go out there and give it your all, and sometimes your all is a little bit over that edge.
They told me in the garage this morning this 39 car would be very good in race trim for Sunday. Here's a guy we know will be good on Sunday, Mark Martin, our pole sitter and a former winner here at Kansas Speedway.
Yep.
Let's update the 5 car. Vince.
Well, Mark Martin pretty happy with the race car, and as you see pretty high up the speed chart right now as well, said it's the best he's gotten off the turns all weekend long, but he does have to turn a little bit better in the middle. Says he had some more bite on that initial run as well. So good start to this practice session for the 5 car, Mark Martin and his crew chief Alan Gustafson.
Yeah, there's one thing that concerns me about Mark, though. He's only run 5 laps. His fastest lap was the first time out. He ran a 31.24, and he goes out for this run just a lap or so and is back in the garage area, which makes me think he's not totally happy with his car.
Yeah, and as you try to change, making that car turn a little bit better in the center, then you're going to lose a little bit of that forward bite that he liked that he had here now. So most of the time you are. You really good crew chiefs like yourself, Andy, could make those changes and you get the thing to turn better in the center and not lose that forward bite.
Well, we sell it well anyway.
All right. Let's take a look at Brian Vickers on the racetrack. Vickers, not a bad qualifying effort there. He will start 12th on Sunday. He only has 1 top 10 finish in 4 starts at Kansas Speedway, that coming in 8th back in 2006.
These have really been the type tracks these guys have excelled at, Brian Vickers and this race team. They've led a lot of laps and run up front.
Yeah, and I think one thing that if this track the groove will move way up and where he can run that top side of the racetrack, that's where he really excels. So I'm sure he's hoping that track will widen out as the race goes on.
We talk about this team excelling. Look at the difference between 2008 and 2009, and you wonder how they made the chase. Take a look, folks. He got the win, 13 top 10s, and even when he wasn't in the top 10, the overall average finish was in a top 15 range.
Yeah, we saw them have a lot of, when they weren't, as you said, in that top 10. They were 11th, 12th. They just did things really well and doing everything that they had to do to make the chase and be competitive. Dave?
First run this session, guys, the car was very tight. They made a wedge adjustment in that car, changed that. On the second run, still just a little bit tight through the center, but the changes did help. This last time, they lowered the rear track bar, which would actually tighten it just a little bit, so they made some other air pressure adjustments as well. I think, now that I'm looking at the note that I wrote here, it was about a 3 loose off the corner, and that's why they lowered the track bar on it. So working with the 83 here, not bad, just working on small things.
Here's the 20 car of Joey Logano, and Joey, obviously we've talked about what happened to him at Dover, Delaware 1 week ago, a 19-year-old rookie, and on lap 31 it all came apart.
Well, look, innocent enough going down the back straightaway, but then guys started arguing over space a little bit. He got tapped in the rear, sent him up in front of all of these guys, and then it was on from there. Not what you expect to see from Dover, Delaware.
Well, you just didn't think this car was ever going to stop rolling, but Joey jumps out of the car, Gets out on his own power there, but a little shaken, but otherwise uninjured.
And people wonder, how do you bounce back from that? How do you get back in the car? Well, folks, we're going to be able to ride with him tomorrow because Joey Logano will be our in-race reporter. We're going to talk to him prior to the race. And if you want to pose a question, log on to ESPN.com, search Ask the Driver, and maybe have your question answered by our in-race reporter, Joey Logano. Just 19 years old, following that 8-roll tumble at Dover. Back at it here on Sunday. Continuing here, happy hour, final practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup cars at Kansas Speedway. This track near and dear to this driver's heart. Clint Bowyer, who started racing dirt cars at Lakeside Speedway about 5 miles away, said he drove by this place every weekend and watched it being built and dreamed about someday being here on a super speedway as a NASCAR driver. Well, guess what? Those dreams have come true, and Clint Bowyer, he said the biggest dream for me will be able to go to Victory Lane at my home track in the Cup car, and he's got a very good shot here tomorrow.
He got a good car. I mean, he's top 5 in practice. Really, really confident this weekend.
Done pretty well here in the past, as you can see. 3 starts, average finish 7.7. Does have a second place finish, but he really, really does want to win. And it means a lot to you around home. I can remember trying to win a first Busch race at Hickory Speedway because that was my home, and that took the longest time. It took forever to make that happen. So sometimes you try a little too hard to make it happen.
There's also $100,000, by the way, up for grabs. It'll be donated in the between him and Carl Edwards. It's called the State Line Challenge promotion. Of course, Clint from Kansas, Carl Edwards from Missouri, and either one of those two that finishes the higher in the race, the highest in the race or best, it will be Sprint will donate $100,000 in their name to Victory Junction Camp.
Yeah, so there's no loser there, so that's a good thing, but it will be a little bit of pride on the line.
Well, this guy right here has had an eventful day so far.
Oh, it has not been what Greg Biffle, when he woke up this morning, this is not what he envisioned happening.
In the previous Cup practice earlier in the day, he had this incident coming out of turn 4 and came right down through the grass. Fortunately, he didn't hit anything, but not the way he wanted to begin his day in practice in the Cup car. Dave.
Hey, guys. There's still some grass down here from Greg Biffle's earlier incident, and when I talked to the team about whether they had any damage on the car, they said, nope, just had to get all that grass out from underneath. In fact, they were joking about the fact that there is blue in there. That's from the Nationwide logo that he kind of destroyed. As for the car right now, much, much better. They were a little tight in the center to start this run. They made some changes to it, got it just a little bit free, so it's that back and forth over the razor's edge so that things like what happened earlier today don't happen again.
That nicely manicured infield. Look what Greg Biffle did to that. And that wasn't his only incident of the day, by the way. He wrecked his Nationwide car in the second of 2 qualifying laps and had to go to a backup car. So that's a tough one for Greg Biffle in terms of this practice. That's probably why he's tiptoeing a little bit here in the final practice. 0-0 on the racetrack. A good effort in qualifying by David Rudiman. He will start 13th on Sunday.
11th fastest so far in this practice.
We're not sure what happened here in this session, but a little incident here in the 0-0 in the 18 car a moment ago as they were trying to come down pit road.
Yeah, I just caught the tail end of this with the guys coming off. I don't know if anything happened on the racetrack, but Kyle Busch came flying up on the outside. Now you'll watch Rudiman jump back as they get to the entrance of the garage area here, and he's actually going to stop, make Kyle wait there a little bit.
Now, boys,
play nice now. Let's listen to David Rudiman's radio.
Let's come over and talk about it. Come on over. I'll settle it right now. I don't know what he was doing.
They must have got into a little bit of an argument over space on the track.
David Rudiman certainly wasn't happy about that. David's a pretty mild-mannered guy. It takes a little bit to ruffle his feathers, but I don't know that you really want to get into a scuffle with him.
It sound like it right there. I don't think I'm going to mess with him.
This is happy hour. You got to be happy during this hour, this final hour of practice. The 2 car, we told you the frustrations in qualifying for Kurt Busch. He will start 39th. They had a brand new race car, and he had his hands full in qualifying. What's going on right now in this session, Vince?
Well, Kurt Busch dealing with a car that's a little tight center out, 23rd currently on the speed chart, and was talking with crew chief Pat Tryson about possible adjustments.
In theory, which went out the window back in March of 2007, this should make us tighter in and freer off.
Yeah.
Yeah, in theory. What do you think about that, Andy and DJ? Huh?
Well, I think what he's talking about is this new car changed the game, Vince. I mean, it really did. Back with the old car, there were certain things you could do that you could count on how it would act on the race car. All the rules are changed now with this new car, and sometimes it's the opposite adjustments that'll get the desired effect. I mean, that's what makes it so frustrating sometimes to get these cars set up right.
But sometimes you just have to go back there and try what you grew up changing, the way that you made them. You know, if you put wedge in, it was going to make you tighter. These cars don't always respond like that, as you're saying, Andy, but sometimes you just have to go back there and try it.
Now, in theory, let's see what's going to happen again here. The 18 and 00.
Okay, is this round 2?
Back on the racetrack. So obviously something has happened that got both these guys frustrated, and they both have stayed in the car, came in quickly, and now pulled back on the track together.
I don't know if they got together on purpose. They may have just coincidentally gone back out on the track at the same time. But don't know what happened in that earlier incident. It looks like Kyle's car is just a little better than Rudeman. You see Rudeman now coming in.
Yeah, well, we saw Kyle Busch right there go up the racetrack. That use all the racetrack right there. But as you go across those seams, man, it just takes a little bit of loss of grip there, and you find yourself out of control.
See progression there for Kyle Busch in practice. Final session a little slower than what he was in the earlier sessions, but they're hunting and looking for a lot of different situations on this racetrack. When this track opened 9 years ago, the driver said basically it was a one-groove racetrack. But in the past 2 to 3 years, most of the drivers would tell you it is 2 grooves and 3 grooves. Now it's your job in happy hour to find out which one works best for you. Does Mark Martin know which groove works best for him? Well, he has in the past here as a winner at Kansas, and he did in qualifying because he will lead him down to the green flag here on Sunday. NASCAR Sprint Cup Series action coming your way 1 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. There have been 7 different winners of the last 7 Kansas races. And folks, the last 2 years, the championship points lead has changed following this race. And it was Jimmy Johnson both years who took the lead. Can he do it on Sunday? Can he catch his teammate Mark Martin, or will Martin pull away? Who will it be? Coverage beginning at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Here are the 5-lap averages, guys, in happy hour. See Jimmy Johnson there at the top, and look at Juan Pablo Montoya. And look at Jamie McMurray, who qualified very well, equaled his best qualifying effort of the year, 3rd. And a local boy right there in the top 10 in terms of consistency over 5 laps.
That's what it takes here at this racetrack. I mean, a fast lap is great, but it doesn't get you much because you don't get to do that but once every run on tires.
And it looked like Jamie was going to have a good run last week at Dover. They started out and ran in the top 10, and then all of a sudden they made an early pit stop. It got under green, got them 2 laps back, and then things kind of snowballed in the wrong way from there for them and ended up not being the day they were looking for.
See, Bobby Labonte is back in the 71 car this week.
Bobby was telling me last night he was really enjoying his time in this. It kind of took him back to, days of his early racing days, because he didn't, they don't have a lot to work with. But he said it's so much fun when they accomplish things because they realize that they are so underfunded and understaffed that it's really fun.
Yeah, I did get to spend a little bit of time with Slugger Labby, the crew chief on this car last week at Dover. He told me, he says, man, I'm telling you, we really don't have any. We don't have a shock dyno. We don't have but just a few springs. I mean, really, they don't have a lot of resources, and it really is incredible what they've been able to accomplish with that.
They can have a team meeting in a mid-size SUV.
Yeah.
They can have everybody there.
Basically what he said.
They got 10 total employees, including a truck driver. They lease a pit crew. They lease engines from Earnhardt Childress Racing. They've been running 2-year-old cars. This car here was the first newer version. It's only about a year old. They were able to get this week, and they're still able to get this car qualified in the top 10. John Darby, the series director for NASCAR Sprint Cups, has told the spotters for these teams here. You see Kyle Busch, the 18 and the 00. They have told the spotters to tell the crew chiefs, and you see there is Steve Addington, that these drivers need to settle it after practice, not on the racetrack. We don't want it on the racetrack. So they NASCAR stepping in, trying to calm down some tempers. Let's go back on the racetrack and check in with the 1 car, Martin Truex Jr. Last time we were on a 1.5-mile track in Atlanta, he had the quickest car and led the most laps.
kind of fell apart at the end of the race for the one car, though. They had, like I said, a really fast car in the beginning. And I think that's one of the things that they really need to work on, is trying to figure out what that is and how they can keep that speed throughout the race.
Andy, I think that's what we see, the difference in the teams that run well pretty much all the time, is making those adjustments. And even when they get off a little bit, because you're going to do that, whether it's a set of tires or an adjustment that you make that just doesn't work for you, the ones that are able to come back from that and make their car again good again. And a lot of these teams aren't able to do that, and this car is just so fickle that it makes it difficult for them to do. But Jimmy Johnson, Mark Martin, Carl Edwards, most of the time, these guys are able to come back and make good days out of it.
That graphic says it all about Sam Hornish Jr. 2 top 5s, 7 top 10s, only his second full year. And there were those that doubted he could make the transition from IndyCar racing to stock car racing, but he certainly has done it now in the second half of this year. How about a great history at this racetrack? Look at 2006 wheel to wheel with Dan Weldon, over 215 miles per hour, wide open at IndyCar, and Sam Hornish got the win for Roger Penske.
And you can see that graphic shows how they have turned the corner with those top 5 finishes now. It's just a matter of time, really, before this guy really does get it. He's so talented, and he's proven it so much in Indy cars. Now, although Indy cars and stock cars, especially this one, are quite different.
Check in on the 48 car. There's Jimmy Johnson. Let's get an update on his status here at Happy Hour. Vince.
Well, it's interesting, certainly the 48 of Jimmy Johnson and his teammate Mark Martin. They've drawn a lot of attention this week after their car measurements were right up against the legal limits at Dover. Some even insinuated that they were almost cheating, which I kind of equate to being kind of pregnant. You know, you either are or you aren't, and they weren't. And I think it's certainly making headlines here again today, as the 48 is number 1 on the chart and the 5 is number 2. Still not completely happy with either one of those cars, but they're still working on it, and they're both fast. Dave?
Carl Edwards not bad right now in the 99 car. I think last time I checked, I was about 10th on the board for Carl. And what they've been fighting is loose off the corner. He rolls through pretty well, gets through the center of the corner, but then has been fighting loose off. They made a number of component changes on that car to try to fix that situation, and it looks like he's going to bring it back in again. Not 100% happy with his car.
Saw that twitch a moment ago on the racetrack. He will think better and come down pit road. But I think one of the best memories we had of the entire 2008 season came here at this racetrack 1 year ago, and the final laps pulled off by this guy, Carl Edwards.
I don't know where he came up with this move, but evidently he planned it, and he made that move on the last lap.
He was doing everything that he possibly could. He said it worked in the video games before, that he could do that and stay wide open, but he couldn't quite keep it wide open. Almost pulled it off, but what a great effort by Carl Edwards on that last lap, trying to beat Jimmy Johnson.
And what I like is that's when he went down on pit road and Jimmy came up there and said, "How'd you like that move?" Jimmy said, "Where'd you come from?"
He was asking Jimmy, he said, how much did I clear you by? He didn't know how much he had cleared him getting in the corner. He said, a lot. He said he wished he'd have known that. He maybe would have backed off just a little bit.
Carl grew up in Columbia, Missouri. It's about 130 miles from this racetrack, and he said he's always wanted to win here as well. So he and Clint Bowyer, a couple local drivers, trying to get it done. Carl right now 11th in the point standings in the chase. Here's the 11 car, Denny Hamlin. And he made his very first career start at this racetrack back in 2005. Had a top 10 qualifying effort for Joe Gibbs Racing. Comes back here on the heels of a frustrating performance last week at Dover.
He was second fastest in the earlier practice session. Today, right now, he's 15th in this one.
You know, something that I talked about in the opening about doing some long runs and getting your car good for that. We're not seeing a lot of that. We only have 6 guys that we're really showing on a 10-lap average here. So these guys are getting out there. They're definitely staying out there less than 10 laps. So people are really searching for something to make their car feel better just in a short run.
Happy hour coverage continuing. A lot of guys on the racetrack. You talk about people searching. There are some guys back in the garage here that are sitting there just watching and thinking. Juan Pablo Montoya's team, they've got his Chevy in the garage. We'll figure out what's going on with them in just a moment. Here's Casey Kane in the final practice session at Kansas Speedway. Casey coming off a top 10 finish at Dover, rebounding from that DNF and 38th place finish at New Hampshire. The good news is he had a top 10 finish last week. The bad news is he didn't move up in the point standings. He's still at the bottom of the chasers in 12th position.
tell you, they're really working hard, though, on the race setups. Yesterday in the first practice before qualifying, they spent most, if not all, of their time in race trim. They never made a mock qualifying run or practice for qualifying until they actually made a qualifying run, and it was pretty impressive.
It was impressive what they did because they were down at the bottom of the sheet, but they well know that you don't get any points for qualifying. It's about going out here in this race, and they have to get their car good enough to beat these guys that they're trying to chase down and just gain some points on, and they have to do it on a regular basis.
And they are running the old R5 engine, not the new R6 that Dodge had because of the crank issue they had at New Hampshire. They've opted to stay with the old engine this week and maybe, just maybe, for the remainder of the year. Here's a 21 car, and that is the awesome Bill Elliott. He'll be 54 years of age this next Thursday. The 1988 Cup champion and 16-time most popular driver. Not running that many races this year, only his 9th start in 2009.
They got a great deal going there with David Hyder, the crew chief, and this Wood Brothers team. It seems like they really believe in each other. And Bill Elliott still got the talent, man. He still get it done behind the wheel.
34 car, that's John Andretti beside him there, trying to get his Chevy dialed in.
He's a little out of the groove right there. John Andretti was.
Yeah, they're hoping that the groove will get up to that point here.
Not there yet.
By the time they finish 400 miles tomorrow, they're planning on being able to come off of that corner much higher.
Or at lap 5, that's called the Dale Earnhardt Jr. groove.
Yeah.
Doesn't he get up there pretty early?
He generally does.
He's usually the one that cleans that groove off.
Between he and Michael Waltrip, they like to get up there and get that done and get some rubber laid down. Not afraid to go up there and make it happen.
Told you there have been 7 different winners here at Kansas Speedway in the 8 races held thus far. Only one driver has won more than once. It's this guy right here. Jeff Gordon won in 2001 and again in 2002, and he has been just so good at this place. No one has the numbers he has here in terms he's got 5 top 5 finishes and 6 top 10s in 8 races.
And I think they view this as a weekend they really need to capitalize. All of those stats don't do you any good. You have to come here and still perform, but it does give you the confidence to know that you know what it takes to make it happen. And they really need to finish ahead of the 5, the 42, and the 48 this week to just gain a few of those points back before they head off to California next week.
And they may have to deal with another teammate here in the 25 car, Brad Keselowski.
Whoa, he's chasing that car off the corner. But I'm looking at the monitor. He's got the best 10-lap average speed.
Right there. I'll bring her to you.
You know, he's got a good car in the long run by the fact that he does have that fastest speed as far as an average over 10 laps.
Give a call to Tony Uri Jr., who is the crew chief on this 25 car, and what a job Tony has done. I know they separated, he and Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Tony Uri Jr. has gone over and really helped Brad Keselowski get this car dialed in. They qualified well at Michigan, ran in the top 10 all day last time he was in this 25 car, and they gambled on fuel mileage, and it didn't work for him, but obviously coming here and starting 3rd on Sunday. Why don't I get an update on Tony Stewart in this 14 car? Vince.
Well, the good news is they've not been having any more power issues. We noted earlier that they had changed the ignition box in that first practice. They weren't 100% sure that that was going to solve the problem, but at least at this point they've not had any further issues. The significant changes they made in the last break here as they came into the pits prior to going out for this run were strictly handling in the rear end of the race car. So Tony Stewart currently 16th on the speed chart, looking to move his way up and coming back in for further data and information and changes.
Thank you, Vince. I'm wondering, guys, we've seen this racetrack in 2 of the last 4 years. We've seen fuel mileage become a major factor in who wins a race. How much do you look at fuel mileage here in Happy Hour, or do you?
Yeah, you're definitely going to look at it. I mean, you really work on it all the time, because anytime you can have a really good long-range fuel car, it can pay off for you. In a mile-and-a-half racetrack like this, where it does get kind of strung out sometimes, and it can be a long green flag run, especially at the end. If you can go a few more laps, it can really pay off.
Well, Tony Stewart knows how fuel mileage can be your friend at Kansas Speedway, because back in 2006, he started back in 21st position. And, folks, he went 71 laps and coasted across on fumes to take the victory. He led only 5 laps, but he led the important 5 because the checkered flag was waving. Tony Stewart, a winner here 3 years ago. Back in a moment. We've got some high-powered hot rods coming your way tonight in HRE action, qualifying at 10:30 Eastern Time and the finals tomorrow at 7 Eastern Time. Of course, NASCAR Sprint Cup action live flag-to-flag coverage here at Kansas on ABC, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, beginning with NASCAR Countdown. And on Sunday, we're going to book in our coverage with NASCAR Now. We'll set the stage at 10 a.m. Sunday morning, and we'll wrap it all up at 10 Eastern Time Sunday night. NASCAR Now on ESPN2. And, of course, next Saturday at California, NASCAR Nationwide Series action, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Been watching our coverage. You see the ticker across the top of the screen. We've shown you that basically the one-lap speeds in this final session haven't changed much. But if you look at the averages across 10 laps, it's a different story. Look at Brad Keselowski.
When you have a tire that falls off like this one does, the first lap on the racetrack is going to be your fastest lap every time, and that's why that hasn't changed. But over 10 laps is what is really important, and even further than that. But in practice, you're really watching this 10-lap average. The teams have a way of tracking this. When they go back and they look at their data, they can compare themselves to other cars on long runs.
See David Rudiman up there, third quickest in that. Looks like his car, they've got his car really handling well. He's also has pretty good speed. He's 11th quick as far as the one lap, but it looks like his car hangs on really well. So these were the type tracks earlier in the year that David Rudiman and this race team were going really well at. Maybe this coming back to Kansas now and getting on a mile-and-a-half track that doesn't have a lot of the banking is exactly what they're looking for.
Remember the 0-0-1 at Charlotte in May. Had a little help from the weather, but he had to be in position there up front to get that opportunity with the weather to get the win. Now here's the 39 car. We told you that Ryan Newman's guys in the garage area this morning felt they had a really good car in their race trim package. Dave?
And they've been riding around about 13th fastest overall on fastest one lap time. Newman reported before he came in the last time that the car was just a little bit loose off the corner, and in the center of the corner there was a little bit of a boom boom. A boom boom that he described as the car hitting the track just a little bit and causing it to tighten up. So it's kind of a mechanical tightness caused from hitting the track. I asked car chief Kevin Padel, what have you guys done to work on that? He said, change the rear sway bar out. That worked for us yesterday. We thought we'd try it again, and since Newman's gone back out, he has stayed out, and that's usually a good sign.
How'd that go again, Dave?
Newman called it a little boom boom.
Boom boom, okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to get that straight.
See, I always thought boom booms were bad.
Well, evidently it wasn't good. So funny how you drivers describe your cars sometimes.
Everybody has a little different way of getting their message across, and that's Ryan. So, and that's not a good thing with the car hitting, because it will upset the car and it'll give you a false reading of exactly what is happening to your car. As you start to try to fix that problem, then you create another problem.
Let's find out what's happening with this 20 car. Now, we know Logano is 8th overall in terms of speed, but look at the roof of the car, the top of the car. You see it moving up and down. Look underneath the inside where he is.
Yeah, we watched this car earlier, and we see this, how it's deflecting. That panel is just a thin piece of sheet metal, but it's got a shape to it which makes it fairly strong. You don't usually see the roof. You see the hoods sometimes do this because it's a lot of downforce on the hood of the car, but usually on the roof we don't see that. You can see with Joey's car here, at least in the corners, that roof is deflecting a little bit.
I would think that can't be a really good thing. I don't know. Maybe they found something that shows that it is, but most of the time you would think anytime that there's a dip there, that air comes back up from being down in, then it goes up over the rear wing on this car. So, but maybe they found it to be something better.
Well, there again, that's the conventional thinking.
Yeah,
I don't know if that went out with the
that went out in 07.
That doesn't seem like it's in the right direction. I'm sure they probably don't know that until they see this video.
Here's a 29 car of Kevin Harvick. 5th in points a year ago.
Sounds like Kevin's a little more happy with this car. See how he's looking inside, if he's really having to work the wheel.
Yeah, if you see this one, you see bracing in his roof. They've got some spars glued up in that roof to give it some more strength. You didn't see that in that 20 car. Wow, Kevin's really working that car, though.
You know, we saw him have to do this at Atlanta a little bit, and we talked about how he was really having to work the wheel off the corner, but it was extremely fast, especially in the long run.
This is the same car, by the way, that he finished second with at Atlanta.
Yeah, it's too loose still.
Yeah, too loose, you can hear him say there. looked like it was.
Boy, it did. It really looked loose. See him rolling down into the
Put that right front back.
Think so, Gil.
Yeah, you can see that right there in this shot. That's the bracing that they've got up inside that roof. These right here, these are spars that they've got attached up there to give it strength so it doesn't deflect.
Now, if it deflects, what we saw in a 20 car, what does that do to the car aerodynamically in terms of the advantage you want from the roof?
Well, you would want that shape to stay consistent, and you see the arch in that roof has to help. You know, you want that air to follow that surface all the way down to the deck lid and then get on that wing to make the most downforce.
Yeah, where you can keep that solid is that air is going to stay attached to the car more, and as Andy said, it stayed with the roof and then follow down the back glass and into the rear wing.
The 42 car we showed you, that Juan Pablo sitting in the garage, and then he had been back on the track and now back in the garage. Let's get an update from Vince.
Well, the biggest complaint Juan Pablo Montoya's had on his race car, which is currently 4th on the speed chart, is that the front end is not working quite as well as he'd like. Brian Patty, fairly happy with the way the car has handled. Of course, wants to make Juan Pablo as comfortable as possible, but he says we're also making some changes with the car to get a clear understanding of what it will do tomorrow, so we make sure we don't over-adjust. Doc?
Thank you, Vince. In terms of single lap speeds, right now Juan Pablo Montoya is 4th overall in this session behind Johnson, Martin, and Kenseth. Final minutes of the final practice session for the NASCAR Sprint Cup cars. And here's where our chasers are running in terms of speed on the racetrack. You see Mark Martin is 2nd overall. Jimmy Johnson is 1st. Kurt Busch still struggling a little bit there in that blue deuce. Casey Kane now getting better and better, now up to 13th with his Dodge. Mark Martin out on the racetrack and trying to get his car dialed in a little bit better here. They had some issues with getting the car to turn and getting some momentum up off the corner early in this session.
Yeah, I'm watching his lap times. They're very, very consistent. These last 4 laps, almost laying on top of each other, and he must be happier with his car because he's staying out on the racetrack.
Let's get an update from Vince.
Well, they certainly have been talking about that front end quite a bit. You wouldn't know it by where he sits on the speed chart, but hasn't been completely pleased with the car as he communicated with crew chief Alan Gustafson.
Just freaking won't turn. Just won't turn. Everybody else turns. Mine doesn't. In the center, or just goes straight, especially if I go in there very hard. Nothing you've done has really, you know, improved it really to speak of. No, it should, but it doesn't seem like it's doing anything.
They came back and put the car on the scales and worked on it a bit and sent it back out. And as you noted, Andy and DJ, seems like it's going a little bit better at this during this run.
Yeah, we saw him in the early part of the practice session. He just ran a lap and then came in, ran a couple more, came in. I mean, he knew he had a problem and wanted to make sure they had enough time to work on it.
Oh, I can tell them they better watch out. When Mark's complaining about his car, it's usually a pretty good sign that he's going to run good the next day. So we'll see what happens. But that seems to be a common theme with most of the drivers that we've heard and the cars that we've watched, getting them to turn in the center. If they get them to turn in the center, then they're extremely loose on the exit of the corner.
Let's update the progress for Casey Kane. Dave.
And Doc, we saw in that graphic he was at the bottom of the chasers list, but that was a 1-lap time. As far as averages goes, he's more closer to 5th in terms of 10-lap averages, and his crew chief Kenny Francis was very conscious of that, telling his driver these are good, consistent lap times, right around the 32-second mark. And the one time when Casey got underneath that, a 31.9, he said, that's exceptional. The 9's car best finish here for Casey Kane has been 9th. They might have a shot at more tomorrow.
They just might, because Casey Kane has been very good on 1.5-mile racetracks. In fact, the last time we were on a 1.5-mile track just a few races ago at Atlanta, it was this guy, Casey Kane, who went to victory lane.
You can see 15 top 5 finishes. Anytime you go to a 1.5-mile track, you consider that 9-car a threat.
Final minutes here, just trying to get them dialed in as best they can. There's the 47 car, Marcos Ambrose.
Yeah, we see a lot of cars on the racetrack going to take advantage of the full practice session, going to run it all the way to the end.
Marcos looks like they're struggling a little bit here. They're 29th quickest, but their car seems to fall off a little bit more than some of the others that we've seen as they put a few laps.
And that concludes this final session for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series.
So that will end it, and Dale Earnhardt Jr., whoa, up across the racetrack there.
Don't want to smack anything. Oh, man, I'm telling you, he's going to wreck that car. You don't want to wreck it when the session's over.
And he will be on the front row when we go to the green flag here on Sunday afternoon. It'll be Mark Martin and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Best qualifying effort of the year for Junior. Could he find his mojo and maybe get back to victory lane? Our coverage at 1 o'clock Eastern time. It is stop number 3 in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. The last 2 years, Jimmy Johnson has taken the points lead at this racetrack in Kansas. Can he do it again? Will Mark Martin be a factor? Could Dale Earnhardt Jr. maybe go to victory lane? Well, folks, they've qualified, they've practiced, and now it is time to race. Join us at 1 o'clock Eastern time here on ABC. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.